All right. Good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Dr. Singh, can hear you.
Yeah, right. So welcome to the logistics town hall on sustainability. Let me reconfigure it as that. We have seen some questions coming on logistics from the audience, and also some panelists touching logistics as a part of the whole debate. As I said in my presentation today, that around 24% of the total carbon emission comes from transport. Of this, freight constitutes around 40%, which is roughly 9.6% of the total emission. How are organizations viewing this as particular challenge? Because there are a lot of global surveys, not just by organizations which are more towards carbon neutrality, and hence they have had a very critical assessment, but even very objective organizations like Transporter Forum International and all others have said that this has been one of the most neglected domain of logistics and supply chain sustainability that we really need to look at. And it is also challenging because it is going to increase from x to 2.6x in the next 20 years, with total transport or freight emission increasing by 2050 to the tune of 22% if the status remains the same. And as I said in the beginning, in my theme address, that there is an optimistic view that if we take up appropriate logistics strategic response to this challenge, then it can be around 72% reduction. But I think that's too optimistic given one of the major problems that we face in logistics sustainability. As if you look at the major challenges, like in supply chain, here also there are certain challenges. And those challenges are very easy to comprehend. Technology is providing a very, very effective way of looking at sustainability and logistics sustainability. Technology is developing, firms have to catch up with technology. Technology also has to get end-to-end, at Aadhar rightly talked about in his address. What is needed is that what are the behavioral, operational, and managerial challenges that needs to be tackled first before technology can help us. That's a very important, debate in UK when they have released this particular document on freight and transport emission, norms. There are a lot of people who say that it is highly and grossly technology focused. Technology is a must; it's a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient in itself. What are those behavioral, managerial, and operational challenges that are important in making the whole, logistics more sustainable? Because if you see around vans, trucks, locomotives, ship, plane, the average, replacement rate in years are going to be around 15 to 20 years. I'm taking the average of van to plane. So a plane is 30, van is 5.7. How are we going to deal with this part of transition? While we bring in more biodiesel or electric vehicles, a large chunk of it will remain in the fossil fuel-based kind of trap. How are we going to deal with this? So logistics sustainability has its own cost. We have been talking about in India about share economy, circular economy, But as panelists have said, that these are also something that needs to be seen and developed. We do not see much vertical and horizontal integration in the supply chain and in logistics and among players. We do not see much of design products with less material. We do not see digitization of physical products. We do not see 3D printing, and hence we see a traditional call for logistics. There are other solutions to it, which I don't want to get into it, but there's also that if India's logistics infrastructure has changed, or globally, if the logistics infrastructure has changed from the past, what has been the strategy of adopting to the infrastructure in terms of logistics networks? I think there are larger domain and which are more strategic, just not technological, which are going to really have a big challenge, because you have underloading, you have overloading, empty running out, and we don't collaborate. We digitize part of it, and we follow old MRPs where lead times are long. So you have a batch volume kind of transportation system. All those things are adding to the emissions and not really creating any kind of benefits to the organization. So in this context, I would really have views from Ashish and Arun. Arun, let me start with you as to what are your views on these things, what are the challenges that you faced at Ultratech, and what were the decisions taken, strategy adopted, and what are left and undone which needs to be done.
Thanks, sure, Dr. Singh. Good afternoon, first of all. Good afternoon, Ashish and other panelists here. Valid question, Dr. So it's a challenge and it's not going to be easy. But I think we should all recall the journeys that we have taken in the past on other initiatives which looked difficult or which has been a journey in the past. When I could remember, maybe let's talk about the road safety journey. I will touch upon that in terms of the standards that came in, whether it is the securing standards which were the UK had released them. In terms of securing of loads, or for that matter, even the kind of vehicles we are talking about. But before that, before I touch upon that, in terms of the supply chain logistics journey so one thing is very clear, it's not easy, and there is no immediate quick fix overnight solution. I think therefore the behavioral part that you mentioned and the collaborative part, which you also touched upon, I think becomes important. And one is, I think it is clearly to acknowledge that this is important and this is required. And that knowledge and awareness, I'm sure, is there at most firms today. I'll talk about what we are doing. And a platform like this is also going to further accelerate and, both knowledge sharing and practices which will help across. That's part number one. When we talk about the second aspect, in terms of how supply chains are managed or how goods are moved in the country, I think those transitions will happen over a period of time, especially when we talk about all modes of transport. And even when we look at India in terms of road to rail to sea, at least I would say the cement industry or Ultratech is lucky in a way, because we use a substantial amount of at least 20% plus of rail, which is, and that's our focus area as well to move it better. The National Logistics Plan also talks about taking the rail coefficient to almost 40 to 45%. And that is also talking about significant amount of investment in infrastructure to make that happen. And obviously, because cement is a product which will use railways, and we hope to kind of migrate more from road to rail. Currently, we use, and in the last 2 years as well, our focus on rail has been higher. So more usage of rail and sea is one clear area that we all need to work on, and therefore, like rightly you said, it's not going to be something overnight. The larger part which comes and the plan also addresses that is in terms of the interfaces, especially when we change from road to rail or rail to sea or vice versa. I think that is where there's a significant amount of efficiency loss, even between one organization. Let's say even my goods are moving from road to rail, that's the efficiency dropped to the interfaces. So when we talk about collaboration here, I think when there are different organizations involved, and then you talked about the next step in terms of reverse logistics or using inbound both the trips to be used. I think those initiatives will take place. I think one significant bottleneck which is there is in terms of the interfaces that come with the different mode. And within the three modes, of course, given that at UltraTech we have about 55 plus manufacturing locations within the country and 1,000 plus warehouses. So that makes it a complex supply chain. But our focus on rail definitely is one area that we're working on. And the other, of course, is in whatever efforts we are taking, we are looking at alternate fuels in terms of some of the cities have good network in terms of CNG, LNG, and we have just started, I must say. But that again is an area which is to be worked with manufacturers in terms of the new trucks that need to come in, and that's where I was stressing on the road safety example, because earlier when the road safety standards did come in, of course, I wouldn't talk about the 3-point retractable seat belt, which was a challenge in India because most of the trucks, come with a flat. The body is made outside. The south part of the country or the north part of the country prefer different colorful, or the designs are different. As they call, and therefore 3-point seat belt was a challenge, or maybe a more complex one would be the ABS braking system was really not there, and which was really mandatory from a standards point of view. And the retrofitting of the ABS brake was definitely not safe. So you're committed to safety. You have only passengers cars which are getting the ABS or the airbags, and the trucks are yet to follow. So I think over the last few years or the 10 years plus, now we have a substantial amount of that population. So I think that part of collaborative working with manufacturers of vehicles has to be here as well. In terms of technology aspect, which we'll talk about, and infrastructure. And therefore, that will be a journey. I think the fact remains is that whether we are going to be committed to it. So yes, we are committed. I think that should be the answer. And it is very important that we have to work along with our vendors and business partners on that particular journey to take that forward. And the same challenges do come in for retrofitting if you want to go to alternate fuels. Some of the bigger challenges come in terms of using biodiesels. The OEMs are not kind of guaranteeing on the engine in case of engine failures. And there are cases basically where truckers have used and they have faced challenges. So some of these things need to be sorted out. So one part is the behavioral and the commitment journey that yes, it is going to have roadblocks, and some of these areas definitely need to be tackled. But I think, like you rightly said, the behavioral part becomes more and more important. The other areas definitely, at least, which is relevant to packaging is something which is talked about, is I think movement of bags to a bulk as a movement, which is definitely more sustainable way of transporting goods, both by I'm referring to bulk by even rail, and so that makes basically the handling and the dust and all that part which is associated with the industry is something basically. And clearly, when we look at the last 20 years or the global trend, the bulk usage is definitely higher compared to the packed ones, at least in this industry. And India is also following those trends. So I see a very clear direction there as far as that movement goes. And the other initiatives, which I think were obviously touched upon, is the whole supply chain in terms of other part of sustainability is how can we make it totally paperless or the seamlessness across vendors and partners. So that would be my bit for the first round, Dr. Rakesh.
Thank you, Arun. I think that was interesting. You brought out a very relevant ecosystem of logistics in its totality, if I have to say. And these are trends which can be, leveraged in order to bring sustainability into forefront and strengthen the organizational initiative towards sustainability. ASIS, Unilever is a massive organization, touches around 2.5 billion consumers across the globe. You move things in 130 countries. Sustainability has been a very high focus in the organization as far as my understanding goes. What, according to you, are the key pillars of logistics sustainability? And you had logistics sustainability initiative. And what are the ways that one really needs to look at it, implement it, and make it a reality with the larger supply chain and the strategic goals?
Sure, Dr. Singh. And yeah, first of all, thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts, and nice to meet you and Mr. Salvi. Yeah, so I feel myself lucky to be working in a company for which the purpose of the company itself is to make sustainable living commonplace. And it is not just a buzzword, it is not just a statement which is written on the wall somewhere and forgotten, but it is being lived on a daily basis in the way we operate our business, the way we build our brands, and the way we engage with communities. I'm sure, I hope all of you would have at least experienced at least one product of Hindustan Unilever, and you would have seen our engagement in the society in India, which would give you a flavor of what we do globally. Making sustainable living commonplace has various dimensions for Unilever. And again, it is not something which is recent. At the start of the company itself, there was a purpose to make life easier for people. When the first bar of Sunlight soap was created, the intention was to make living easier for people to get a better wash. From there, the company ethos has always been to look at what is good for the society and can we build products and services around that. We have also made an external commitment to get to a net zero by 2039, well ahead of the 2050 climate accord. And we are, as an organization, gearing up to make that commitment 100% achieved even before 2039. Logistics is very much part of that commitment, because the commitment is up to scope, not just scope 1, but scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, which includes logistics. In fact, we want to go up to the customer's shelves as well. And we are working with lots of partners to achieve that. So Dr. Singh, you mentioned about a very, very important point initially about the behavioral challenge in this. And as I said, I think the first and foremost important point which helps Unilever do what it is doing today is that we have clearly set out the objective that we want to be known for making sustainable living commonplace. And that is something which drives all the behavior right from the top of our leadership to the last person on ground. So I really don't see much of a misalignment in terms of we saying something and doing something. What we are saying is what we are doing. And everybody is clearly aligned with that goal and with that purpose statement. So I think that actually helps a lot in unlocking a lot of roadblocks and thinking on solutions rather than thinking for why we cannot do it. So the mindset changes when you set the ambition and the direction clearly. So that really helps us a lot. But then it is important that we should, and I think the previous speaker was speaking about it on the previous session, about unless we measure something, it is very difficult for us to make any improvements on it. The first and foremost learning for us has been that we have been able to start measuring our emissions, not just emissions, all sustainability KPIs since 2010 onwards, which we are also reporting in our annual reports. And there is a very detailed process that we follow for each of the KPIs that we report. And we take it very seriously because we carry targets for those improvements. And that also drives a lot of behavior, because you are measuring a KPI, you are reporting it, you are reviewing it, and then you also learn how to improve it. So I think that is also an important element. Now coming on to the challenges of execution, because I also hear a lot about. First of all, logistics is a hard to abate sector. Let's not demean the challenge. It is a huge challenge to decarbonize this industry. It's a hard to abate sector. There are technology developments which are very promising, but do we have a clear roadmap as an industry to get to net zero by 2050 as the entire logistics industry? The answer is no as of now. We still have a long way to go. However, there are few approaches, and Mr. Salvi already talked about it, and we also have something similar when we look at decarbonization of logistics in particular. Pillar for us is all about operational efficiencies, and the second pillar is all about transformation or transition to innovation or a different kind of technology. Over the last 10 years, the journey that we have had on driving decarbonization, close to 80% of our improvements have come out of operational efficiency measures. Operational efficiency measures for a consumer goods company or for Unilever in particular are two buckets that we measure. One is how many kilometers are we traveling per ton of sale of our product? And that is defined by our network efficiency. So if I am producing everything in Haridwar and selling everything in West and South, kilometers per ton of sale is higher as compared to I having a regional production and regionalized distribution, which reduces the kilometers traveled for making a sale. And there are various dimensions in it. One is the regionalized distribution, regionalized production, regionalized sourcing. But there's also an element of how much of volume can be directly serviced from a factory to the customer instead of going from a factory to a warehouse, a distribution center, and from there to customer, or sometimes there are multiple legs. So we always keep looking at opportunities of going directly from factories to customers so that we minimize the emissions and the distance that we travel. That element. Second element, Mr. Salvi also talked about the empty kilometers and I think Dr. Singh also talked about empty kilometers. Roughly 17 to 20% of the kilometers run on the roads is empty. So either the truck driver is going from point A to point B because there's no load, but the load is at point B, or the way contracts are such that you have an empty run in between. We also start to track that on basically how much of digital freight matching solutions are we using, and how are we reducing the requirement for the truck driver to go to somewhere else. So can we run within our network, can we run loops rather than lanes? Because if we run loops, then the chances of reducing kilometers, empty kilometers goes down. So that's also another part of operational efficiency that we measure. The third element of operational efficiency for us, which Mr. Salvi already talked about, is also intermodal. It is not very big for us in India currently, but in markets in Unilever, USA, Russia, and China in particular are leaders on intermodal using of railway, road plus rail for long distance travel. So anything more than 1,000 kilometers of distance that we need to travel, we would prefer to go on an intermodal rather than going only on road. India has a lot to do in this space, and I've been closely following the developments. A lot has changed in the last few years. There is a dedicated freight corridor which is coming up. We are looking at freight trains running on timetables, services. All of these are in the right direction. What we would need is an integrated operator who can run the operation end to end. So basically from our factory to a customer, including intermodal solution, because the more we have an integrated player, the easier it becomes for us to execute. So that's an area that could unlock. When I talk about, so these were on the operational efficiencies. And as I said, last 10 years journey, we have reduced 40% of our emissions intensity. Most of that has come from operational efficiencies across the globe. And there is a lot to be done. So it's not completely gone. But when I talk about the transformation or transition side or the innovation side of it, and I would completely agree with Mr. Salvi's comment, there are solutions available. So while the end state that we all are talking about in logistics is a complete zero emission, whether it's a battery electric truck or a hydrogen fuel cell truck, and some of those prototypes are already running In Europe, there is a hydrogen fuel cell truck. There are 10 trucks of Hyundai hydrogen fuel cell which are running in Switzerland. Tesla is already doing some trials in US. Volvo, Freightliners, all these big OEMs are already doing basic pilot runs on their pure electric trucks as well as hydrogen fuel cell trucks. And the current view that we have from talking to the OEMs as well as industry experts is that the fuel cell trucks and the zero emission trucks that we're talking about, and the heavy duty long haul trucks that we're talking about, more than 15 ton of trucking capacity and going more than 500 kilometers in single charge, that is at least 2 to 3 years away from now for them. What do we do then? Do we just sit tight for next 3 years, wait for those trucks to come, or do we in between? And the other question is, even if they come in 2025, there won't be enough capacity for producing enough number of trucks for us to zoom to a zero emission solution. So there is always going to be a transition to an alternate or a better or an intermediate solution, whether it's CNG or LNG or bio CNG, bio LNG solutions, or it is hydrogenated vegetable oil, HVO solutions in some of the countries that are developing. And I definitely see a big role of these intermediate fuels for the next close to 10 years, even longer in India, before zero emission trucks in heavy duty long haul become an actual commercial reality. So long term, yes, zero emission, battery, but short to medium term, there is a huge for alternate fuels trucks to play. We are trying to make some specific partnerships in this space, because other point Mr. Salvi and Dr. Singh you mentioned about is the role of collaboration. So I see this as a collaboration between first our own internal members of the supply chain, so the OEMs, the fuel suppliers, the transporters, and then there is also a role for external collaboration with other shippers, because as I said, if you really want to make this transition and then you really want to make it to a certain level of volume, you need to take the industry along. You can't go alone and just do it for yourself. You may succeed. It's not that you not succeed, but you need that critical mass to make any technology become beneficial. So we have been working on this direction. I don't have like a successful use case to share with you in India in particular, but in other markets, mostly in Europe, we have had good success in switching over to bio LNG, HVO in particular. In fact, very recently, we also have started, it's just a small start, but we have created a cost neutral, zero emission refrigerated solution for our ice cream business in Netherlands, which is probably one of the most difficult one to crack, because refrigerated trucks are even more carbon intensive. So it's a humble beginning, only 2 trucks, but they are in operation for now 2 to 3 months. We are taking lots of learnings from it and taking it from there. So that's how we see it. So it's not just a matter of extra cost. It is not necessarily extra cost all the time, but it is about creating that ecosystem of partners with whom you can work and develop solutions, and then take it to the larger industry, because the more users will come and use those solutions, the more beneficial, economical, and scalable they will become. So I think as an industry, we need to come together and look at intermediate solutions as well, rather than waiting for a perfect solution of a zero emission truck in 2030 sometime.
Thank you, Ashish. I think that covers the entire gamut of logistic sustainability. Let me go back to Arun. Arun, what do you see it as the next step in the direction of operational efficiency, what Ashish said? And in terms of, as you also mentioned, some kind of collaboration. How are, if a given a quality of infrastructure improving, what are the other ways of really improving the carbon footprint in the logistics sector, not just about fuel, but what can we do together as different players, and what kind of collaboration do we see in the long run to be helpful in terms of reducing distance and minimizing carbon footprints?
Yeah. I think I was very happy to hear what Ashish was saying, and largely the points in terms of operational efficiencies or what we're trying to do are aligned. Apart from the fact that these are anyway the right things to do as well. Especially lead as kilometers travel. We call it lead in the cement industry is a standard parameter. That's because of the nature of the product itself. Not a high cost product. Therefore, the lesser lower distance around the geography of the plant you sell is also the right thing to do, and that kind of aligns. So on the operational efficiency part, so one is what dawned upon me right now is as the KPIs are the same, what Ashish was talking about, and Dr. Rakesh, what you talked about is what can we do together. I think this is about the boundary of individual versus team, and as individual organizations, I can see that we are all doing what it needs to be done, at least directionally, in terms of let's talk about the 4 KPIs, which one could be the lead, second is direct dispatches, third is the empty run, and fourth is the intermodal part. So every organization internally would be, or the logistics or the supply chain folks or the teams would be working on this and trying to maximize. Where we need to work together is definitely in terms of getting all the stakeholders together. So let's take, for example, the empty kilometers or the inward-outward integration, as some people call it. We call it reverse logistics in some cases. I think that is a good case for collaboration. And when I talk about collaboration now, I'm talking about us as a geography, us as a country, or maybe us as supply chain, so that we are able to reduce that number collectively. Technically, when we see about empty kilometers, someone would definitely refer that, okay, after I use the truck, it's a market truck, it has gone empty basically, so it's not in my count, as we call it, but it is in the country count, or the it's in the it's in the ecosystem count. Let me put it that way. So and that's where I think technology as an intervention can come in. So that leads to maybe solutions like transport aggregation is not something as mature in India, especially for trucks. It's only a start now. That definitely I see a full potential for getting working together. That will help, I think, both the efficiencies in terms of getting the trucks in time, and obviously in terms of the cost part as well, because today you have visibility to what is there within your system, but you don't have visibility to what's happening outside. So if we monitor and look at some collaborative initiative backed by technology, I think that seems like a very, very useful thing to do, or the right thing to do, which all of us strive for. Definitely, that's one part. The second part was in terms of the modal share. Clearly, we know that India's logistics cost to GDP is definitely much higher than the other countries, whether it is China and, of course, the matured countries, which Ashish was talking about. And one of the reasons, clearly, I think that also came, Ashish, in your talk, that we all know that the rail component, of course, in some of the European countries, both in terms of technology and apart from the dense network India has, I think the other parts are not really fully upgraded, and that's definitely so. That part of obviously also requires working together, but I think that needs working together with the railways, I would say, and the railways today, or railways always has been very open to understand customer requirements in India, and working towards what the customer wants as an organization, and they are definitely open. I think getting very clear on the priority there as to how we can work towards both the rail part or the intermodal part or the interfaces, which consumes a lot of time and efficiency, will definitely help. So these two things I definitely see, Dr. Rakesh, as things to work on across in a collaborative manner. Yeah.
I think that takes us to the last point of discussion. Collaboration with stakeholders outside in stakeholders. What about collaboration with internal stakeholders? Traditionally, one of the biggest challenges has been to understand optimizing efficiencies, and here efficiencies in terms of new matrices of sustainability. What is the role of organization, SNOP and IBP? Because that also would be facilitating element. First, is logistics a very significant part of this decision-making process? Is sustainability a part of it? Right? Or it is very traditional. So I'll bring Ashish here and your view, Ashish, on this.
Because this is very pertinent question, Dr. Singh. So yeah, we have made this journey. So I've been with this company for 15 years, and I've seen various business cases and various network decisions being taken. Many of those were based on a lot of government incentives. So you will set up factories in far off corners, which has a definite negative implication on logistics cost as well as emissions. From there on, we have moved to a far more longer term integrated approach of network design. And I was talking about or touching upon it when I talked about regional procurement, regional production, and regional distribution. That is the approach which we are now taking, not just in India, but in many markets globally. And to your question or point in particular, Dr. Singh, about do we consider sustainability in it or not? We do. So our network modeling tool now is actually calibrated, or one of the inputs is the cost of carbon in it. So if you are making a change in your network, if you are moving a factory or if you are moving a distribution center, you can immediately, within few hours of working, you can find out what is the implication on emissions. And not just there, what could be the mitigation solutions? For whatever reason, if you still have to make a decision which is going up in the opposite direction of sustainability on logistics, what are the mitigation solutions that you can make as part of your project itself is something that is coming in. Of course, I won't say that everything is awesome and everything is great and everything as we expect it to be. There are challenges with which is such a large organization, but that is something that is being done. The second point which I wanted to touch upon is importance of internal stakeholders collaboration. And I think, Dr. Singh, you were alluding to it. I'm not too sure. But sometimes we as logisticians have this mind, or at least I had this understanding with me that sustainable solutions are going to cost a lot more. Yeah, and therefore there has to be some amount of investment earmarked, or I should get like a business case, even if it is slightly on cost or significantly on cost. So first of all, that approach does not necessarily work all the time. And that is also not a truth all the time. So many of the solutions, especially on operational efficiency, it is hand in hand with cost saving as well, most of the time. So there is no issue with that. Most of the time, your operational efficiency projects are saving cost as well. So there is huge support from the organization to drive it, even more focused than sometimes needed. But on solutions which are on the edge, where you have a very, very tight TCO, total cost of operations or ownership, whichever way you want to see it, with diesel, is where your collaboration with other stakeholders in the organization will make a huge difference. How do you get to better planning? How do you get to better utilization of those assets? How do you create a business case which is not short-term, 6 months, 1 year kind of a scenario to a more longer-term 2 to 3 year kind of a scenario? How do you work with your finance partners to look at various financing options and various kinds of options to make that business case work is something which is supremely important. And people are supportive if they are part of the journey from the beginning, if they understand why they are doing this and what is the impact it is going to create. I have seen support coming from every corner. So it is for us also to go with a more pragmatic approach, not expect that sustainable solutions or technology transitions will always come on huge on cost or significant on cost. We need to really get down with a clear mindset of a bottom up or a standard costing or whichever way you want to do it. But also open up for more innovative ways of doing it. I can't expect a transporter to invest in CNG trucks for me if I want to give only a 6-month contract. Yeah, so I also need to be open up then to say that for these particular lanes, we want to go for a longer 2 to 3 year contract, because there is a significant investment being made by transporter in getting a new fleet or even retrofitting the fleet. So we also need to be flexible with our positions across internal and external stakeholders to make those business cases work. If you go with a fixed mindset of what we are doing today, the same logic should apply for a new technology, it won't work. So that's one of the learnings that we are seeing and we have seen in various projects, is that we have to open up our mindset first and then start to emerge.
Arun, what is your take on this question? Because I think this closes the debate once we address this question.
No, the internal stakeholder question is very valid, but I think in terms of maturity, while I agree with Ashish that every organization has the challenges and that I would say the conflict of objectives and goals as a part of SNOP or these are to lead to better operational efficiencies. But I would say that when I rank them, I think we are much ahead or better off on the maturity curve on that. Most organizations, I would speak for myself as well, compared to why I was stressing on the collaboration part or the inter-organizational collaboration part, was that is something basically I thought on a ranking, something what Ashish mentioned is that I think it's time to get the OEMs, the fuel suppliers, the transporters, and us together, and then figure out a way, and technology service providers together, and figure out a way, even for maybe 5 or 10 like-minded companies, and I wouldn't mind doing that, and getting together. Let's do something. I thought on that part of the maturity scale we are slightly lower. SNOP definitely, most organizations are ahead. There is still a better scope available for doing that with internal stakeholders, but that the larger part of the alignment is there, and there are like we said, it's not an easy journey. There are what you call challenges to do on the ground, but definitely. I think getting robust on SLAs or honoring SLAs in terms of those parts are something definitely we should continue working upon. I would totally agree on that. The other part, of course, which we talked about again on internal stakeholders is there is definitely going to be choices to be made. And these choices one has made earlier in earlier journeys, and I keep referring to safety because that's one passionate subject as well in a country like us, and so is sustainability. So there have to be choices to be made, and you cannot get both basically. So for example, the classic debate of spot or market trucks versus dedicated trucks, or if I'm going to measure lead only for my dedicated trucks and not for market, then obviously my numbers are going to be better off. I'm talking about generally within supply chain logistics fraternity. So we need to expand the scope here, and the same would apply to so something which I talked about, like the empty run. We're talking about technology. We're also talking about aggregation of transporters or aggregation of marketplace. Now that assumes that the quality of the truck that you're going to get is the same. Now that is something which is very, very far from real. That can happen maybe only in specific industries like oil or tanker or chemicals, where because of the nature of the product or by regulated by law, the standards have to be the same or are reached at the same level. So therefore, the rest of the drug market, I would say, for achieving an objective of operational efficiency, or even for that matter cost, you may want the benefit of aggregation and lower cost, okay, but at the same time, if you want an alternate fuel, and Ashish talked about that, and alternate fuels, or to use something, then typically a transporter, even for retrofitting, has to spend higher than much higher. The cost for installing a LNG or a CNG is almost 3.5 lakhs per truck additional. Far from the point that higher payload capacity trucks are still not available. Definitely, therefore, one needs to earmark and allocate maybe lanes, or recognize the fact that these are going to be different. And I totally support Ashish's view on that, that unless we make a start on those parts, and somewhere it's like, that's what you call allocated or a new product. As much as we take care of a new product when we launch it in the market, this is going to be something like that. This is going to be a new lane with a new CNG, so it needs to be kind of kid gloved, I would say, to some extent, so that once we reach a basic stage, we can then move ahead. And when everybody has these population of these vehicles reach a particular level, then they can be available to compete in the marketplace. So that definitely will be there. The other part I would talk about is, at least not at a global level, but in the country, we looked at the scenario last 6 months, and with the rising fuel prices, what has also happened is, it has also led to, what you call transporters, and taking our transporters to a new level of professionalism is something that becomes important. And that's a two-way process. I think the genuine due which is there for the transporters also need to. So a clear commercial mechanism is yet to evolve in the country. I think it's all about, hard negotiation, or at points basically, whether there are locals, whether there are unions, all these aspects also become a truth of practicality on the ground. Especially you see in the last 6-7 months, and part of that, of course, was due to the rising diesel prices. But I think these all are going to be the hurdles, and it's a challenging journey. Not as far as we are, keeping our side of the promise, and being honest and true about it. And that's where the organizational part comes in, the behavioral part comes in, which you talked about. But I think we will get there, is what I strongly believe in. Yeah.
Thank you, Ashish, and thank you, Arun. I think tell the truth as it is, and I think the transition starts, the transformation starts. And I think both of you have really emphasized on this, and the truth is that there is something happening. There are so many constraints. There are so many opportunities to be together, collaborate internally, externally, and even with not partners, newer partners, technology aggregators. And I think the journey is going to be very interesting, and this is mandatory for the climate and the world. So thanks for your views, and we thank you all.